Welcome to this week's installment of Reading with Robin, your number one destination since 2002 for insightful author interviews and discussions on everything literary. And with no further introduction, your host, Robin Call.
In a summer where there are so many amazing books and many of them start to feel, a little similar, here's one that's going to stand out. Stay and Fight by Madeline Ffitch. Madeline writes and organizes in Appalachian, Ohio. She was a founding member of the punk theater company, the Missoula Oblongata. Her writing has appeared in Tin House, Guernica, Granta, Vice, and Electric Literature, among other publications. She's been awarded residencies at Yaddo and at MacDowell Colony, and Stay and Fight is your debut novel. I will never forget this book, I'm pretty sure. Welcome to Reading with Robin, Madeline.
Thank you so much for having me. My
pleasure. This book came to me, as many do, via my daughter, who said, you must read this book. You are going to love this book. And the Reading with Robin audience knows that means, I'm going to read that book. And it really does stand out. It's just from the cover, which is amazing, and the nightmares about the snakes that I might have had. A lot of snakeage running through the book. It's full of heart and a lot of humor, and I just loved it. I absolutely devoured this book. If I could have stuck it in a stew and cooked it up with some acorn flour. That's in the book, Reading with Robin alert. I'm just a little insidery, but I got to talk to you about there should be like a cookbook or something that goes.
Oh, no, that's a good idea.
Right?
That would be fun, yeah.
Amazing, and such a pleasure to get to speak to you. The book came out 5 weeks ago?
Yeah, July 9th was the day.
And what are you hearing? We have 3 copies that we're going to be giving away with the podcast, so people can go to Reading with Robin on Facebook, and we'll have that posted. What are the readers saying?
Well, it's been really great to hear the reader feedback. I'm writing for a rural community, and there's a lot of kind of like received wisdom, common wisdom out there that if you really want people to read your book, you're going to need to be writing for that rural audiences aren't big readers, and you're going to be needing to write so city people can understand. And what's been interesting to me is that people are getting back to me and just saying, city people, and saying, thank you so much for this book. It's really striking a chord with people who are thinking about wanting to live on their own terms and sort of question kind of the sort of the everyday ways that things are going, or the common order, and also for people who've kind of ever felt in any way on the outside of things, or sort of out of step with convention. And I think people are really appreciating that from a lot of different backgrounds. I've been just hearing people from just kind of all across the board giving me a lot of feedback about that, and it's really welcome to hear that. I'm glad it's resonating with people.
Yeah, because you write the story, it gets published, it's all incredible, and then I can imagine that feeling of what will people be saying, how will they receive the book, and what gets fed back to you, things that resonate with people, or the things that you think would be like the first bit of feedback, and then other pieces of the book, and also just coming out at such a time, really, in our history here, and what is important, and what just this whole different way of living, like you say, on your own terms, and reading this book, just thinking about the way things are, and then I sit down with the book and I'm in this world that you've created, and I'm chatting with Madeline Ffitch. Her book is called Stay and Fight, and I feel like I'm so absorbed in that world and what your characters are doing, and then something happens in present day, and I have to sort of readjust, because that's how deeply I was into the story. Such a well-told story. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and people can visit your website, MadelineFitch.com, and you're on Facebook, and where else might they find you?
I'm also on Twitter. I'm not so good at taking pictures, so I haven't tried the Instagram thing yet, but maybe someday.
Yeah, no, a lot of people that are on Instagram are not, so you will fit right in. The book was in Oprah, was one of the books not you won't put down, which is amazing. Starred Review, Publishers Weekly, on Nylon List, New York Times. I mean, it's really everywhere. And I always want to know, of course, where the story started in your mind, what was floating around there, and what were like some of the first pieces that you knew, and then you said, okay, I'm going this way with this book.
Sure. I mean, I think there's, you often hear it said you should just start writing if you really have something to say. And I think for me, I kind of started writing because I had a lot of questions, and I had some concrete and specific experiences that I had questions about. And one of them is that I had moved to Appalachian, Ohio, where I've now lived going on 11 years, and and I immediately got a job running ropes and running chainsaws for an arborist, for someone trimming trees. So I was working on, his ground crew and learning that job, and kind of immediately going to work with my neighbors and people in my community and hearing stories from the area, especially people talking about black snakes. Living in their houses and sharing space
so that
with
was
them.
True. Okay.
Everything in the book about a black snake is true except the snake bite, and I don't want to do any spoilers, but
no spoilers.
That's
but so even like the menu items, I guess that's all true too. Right?
Yeah. All those are stories that people tell about ways that they've interacted with snakes and the ways that they cohabitate, that people live with snakes in my region, and then so. I was noticing that. I was noticing what it was like to just get to know the land and the trees and the animals in the area, and things that really challenged me, like, okay, snakes. I'm thinking, that seems scary, and instead my neighbors are like, oh, the snakes are good luck, and the snakes help keep mice and rats away, and black snakes eat copperheads, and also this attitude towards land and place, like, the snakes also live here, and they're impossible to get rid of. They're territorial, so we're just going to live with them. They don't bite. They're not venomous, and we're going to find ways to live with them. And so hearing people talk about that was just really fascinating to me, and my little writer brain, I'd be working these long days, but meanwhile I'd be taking notes, jotting down notes. Wow. And again, it wasn't something like I have something to say about this, but I was trying to be pretty humble to new experiences I was having and really listening deeply and participating with the community that I was new to at the time. So, and I feel like I could, now I've had kids here, I've built a house here, I've plumbed my spring for drinking water, and I could live here for the rest of my life and still feel new to the area. People have pretty deep roots here.
There is something about that, and then you start to feel like, well, I'm from here, but I know depending on where you live, and I'm in Rhode Island, and I was saying to you off air, it'll be 34 years, and it's still like, well, where are you from? Who are your people? Like, unless you've been here for a long time. So I know there are a lot of communities where it's sort of like that, and I can imagine. But if you've done all that, to me, like, you get the keys to the place. I mean,
there's a way that you can come in somewhere and just sort of stand on the outside and watch, and then there's a way you can come in and work with people, know people, and it changes things pretty quickly, I think. And one thing I think too about this kind of and that I really hope is emphasized in the book is that people really can know each other across difference, and they know that you're different, and we know that we don't have to pretend we're all the same. And there can be conflict, and there can be grave disagreement, but there are also pretty deep ways that people can trust each other and can like prove that they are trustworthy, even if they might be unfamiliar to each other in a lot of ways.
And that comes across really strongly in the book within your the family you've built in this story. So talk about some of those characters and the way they come to live together and trust each other and prove that.
Sure. Well, so Helen...
Thanks for the setup, by the way, Madeline. It was perfect.
Well, Helen is one of the points... So there's 4 point-of-view characters. Helen is one of the narrative characters. She moves to the Ohio Hills from the Pacific Northwest, from the city, and sort of throws herself in with this, like, zealotry, the enthusiasm only a newcomer can have to learning all the everything about Appalachia. And I feel like it was definitely when I was writing that character, it was sort of, even though I would not call it autobiographical, it was a way for me to sort of make fun of and exaggerate aspects of being an in-migrant,
Yes. Very funny.
And then, so she moves to the area, and she has a piece of marginal land with pipeline running down one side. This is really just raw land, and she's trying to make a go of it there. And then she has two neighbors who help her out, Karen and Lily. And Karen and Lily have are generations have generations-long connections to the area and are about to have a baby, Pearlie. And Pearlie also becomes one of the narrative characters. When he turns 7, his voice comes into the novel in the present action, and he tells a lot of the story. Yeah. And so Karen and Lily are about to lose the place that they're living, and they need a new place to live. And Helen invites them to come live on the piece of land that she has. And a lot of the story is them trying to make a go of it together, and now they do not get along. Helen's a real know-it-all, and Karen has a pretty bad attitude, and Lily is one of these kind of unbearable peacemakers. And they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that partly when I was writing it, I think there's a lot of pretty overly sentimentalized romantic notions about homesteading right now. It's pretty, it's a big brand. And as someone who's been out here living in the woods and trying to build from scratch, it's kind of absurd, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, and you learn as you go, and you make a lot of mistakes, and it's a pretty complicated, it's ethically and politically fraught, it's economically ridiculous. It's not as beautiful as maybe the Instagram photos make it look. So I really wanted to write a novel that sort of showed
nice and gritty.
Shows the nitty-gritty and the absurdity of trying to make it happen, but also with a lot of compassion for the independent spirit and the ways that people really do want to live on their own terms.
It's just so much to think about. I mean, if ever there were a great book to discuss in a book club, it would be Stay and Fight by Madeline Ffitch. So put this one on your list, and there are a lot of people that are always certainly looking for book club suggestions. And if your group doesn't have a great discussion and a colorful, rich, and with varied opinions on this book, there's just so much to talk about. Just the characters right there. I mean, what you sort of think when you start reading about them, and where your knowledge of any of what this life is like comes into play, and prejudices, or just sort of seeing the situation through Helen's eyes. Like you say, she's coming into it new, and so many of the lines are just so funny. And then you've got Rudy there, who just like this. I love this character. I just love his character. Talk about Rudy and how he fits into this family, this community.
Well, Rudy for me kind of starts out as this feminist joke, I guess. He's the framework for the book, because the first page is about this infection that Rudy gets in his private part.
Starts out just, if that doesn't grab you, then just don't even come to me if you want to read a book. If that doesn't get your attention, what will? So yes, very graphically described, vividly.
Right. And he's a real sort of swashbuckling, got a lot of braggadocio, tree trimmer. And I will tell you, as I was writing my acknowledgments page, I was like, oh my gosh, how many of these guys do I know? There's so many cantankerous arborists out there, and some of them I'm related to.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I kind of started the book out thinking, okay, it seems like this sort of macho guy is going to steer the plot and control a lot of the action, and it's going to be this tall tale thing, and then it switches on you, and really the women are driving the action and making things happen. And Rudy turns out to be a real cream puff, real puddle on the floor, and a real vulnerable guy. He wants to be loved, and he's suffering, and he's really relying on the women around him. And I think he's one of the people who, he's got a mouth like a pirate, to put it nicely. And
there's some colorful language, which is some of my favorite parts of the book. Very
right, and some prejudices that come out. Right, he's more than happy to share some real ignorance, and also he also is someone who shows up when it counts and always helps and supports the people that he loves and defends the people that he cares about, and in really material and practical ways. And I think that that's a theme in the book that I'm really interested in exploring, is this kind of, like I said at the beginning, different ways that people build trust. And it is a question that presented itself to me as a writer, these unlikely relationships and unlikely affinities that can be built between people really based on practical action, and showing up as something that's not a metaphor, even across difference and even across a lot of conflict.
Yeah, it's heartening to see that, and to read along and just be enveloped in this story. It was one that I read fairly quickly because I just had to. I'm like, what is going to happen? You had me right at the beginning, and the pace was just right. It was just such a treat. Is this the kind of book that when I share it with people, I'm like, you're welcome. Here you are. You're welcome. I have all of these little things marked off, and like I've said on Reading with Robin many times, I move into a book when I move, when I'm enjoying it, I just move in. But there were just so many funny moments, a lot of tension, situations that are, there's like a lot of really big stuff in here. I mean, you talked about Pearlie, who we hear from when he's 7. His dialogue is so precious to me. It's I love the way he talks about his women.
Right.
Talk about Pearlie and how he's being raised and how he's trying to sort of figure out. You're listening to the grown-ups who are trying to teach him things, and then they have real-life things to contend with. And he's really perceptive, very smart, and he's trying to figure out what's true. And as a parent, we were talking off air about children and all of this, reading this as a mother and then reading this as a reader, maybe not in my motherly head, it's very interesting to try and combine those two when you're thinking about a child growing up and what he's trying to figure out. So talk about that a little bit. If I asked you a question there, you could probably figure it out.
Yeah, well, of course, now, I am a parent, and I will try to talk about raising children without getting choked up. But, I think that what's really true about parenting is we're raising individual people who are their own people, and at some point, we don't have control over who they become. And I think that Karen and Lily and Helen and Rudy are doing their best. And ironically, the lessons that they are trying to instill in Pearlie about being an independent, tenacious, free-spirited, critical person, hardworking, and resourceful person, those lessons work. He does become that. And it is not in the way that they necessarily intend.
It never is. It never is, Madeline.
And a lot of the story is them dealing with the consequences of that. And what I hope happen is that some of the things that start out in the book as pretty funny, the foibles of trying to live independently and live off the land and build this life from scratch, they take on a darker turn, and you sort of see them amass, and so eventually the family has run-ins with the state that have major impacts for their family being able to stay together. And one of the things that happens is that Pearlie wants to go to school, and his family, they've been through the ringer of trying to resist normative culture, and they want to protect him from the influences of convention, and he doesn't want that. He wants to be around other kids, and he wants to sort of be out in the world, and he makes that happen, and the consequences of that have far-reaching effects for the family and really steer the rest of the book.
And that's where, like you say, it does take a darker turn, and things happen. We never give away spoilers on Reading with Robin. That should be my tagline, Reading with Robin. We never give away spoilers. That would be the worst thing to ever do, because I would never want to spoil this book or any other book that I love for my readers. And it's Stay and Fight by Madeline Ffitch. Do not miss this book. Like I said, it's one that will stay with me. It stands out. And it will always be one of those memorable books from the summer of 2019. I will really remember reading this. Some special places and some, I don't know, just you remember where you were when you read something, and I can almost smell the air around me as I'm reading it. That was how deeply it embedded itself into those nettles in the book. There were so many things in the book that I was so curious about, and having spoken to you a little bit also before, thinking, okay, wait, was that true? Does that happen? And that's why I sort of said about a cookbook, because some of the cooking in this is really interesting. Did you make any of the recipes that Lily's cooking, or?
Yeah, the one big one that I have not eaten is acorn flour.
Yeah, I'm so curious about this. I'm is it going to be the new I don't know, chickpea flour, or is there,
right.
what is it?
We'll never underestimate a fancy restaurant's ability to turn something into some kind of overpriced thing we could order. But
absolutely.
Most of the things in the book are things that I eat and that I make and that I learned to eat and make from my neighbors and mostly from women in this region. And then when I branched out past what I was familiar with, so I'd eaten definitely roadkill, definitely, raccoons and possums and things like that. And then definitely wild foods like nettles are just really plentiful and really nutritious, and wild mushrooms are this area is not great for agriculture. It's really hilly, but people here for generations have had informal ways of gathering food and putting food by, and are very resourceful. And when I moved here, people immediately, I moved onto this piece of land, and people were coming there with their kids and saying, well, this is where we harvest mushrooms, and we've been harvesting mushrooms here for 5 generations. So can we, even though we don't own this land anymore, whatever that means, can we still harvest mushrooms here? Well, who would I be to say, no, you can't? I mean, of course, it's a lot of the ways that people are bonded with land in this area and in most areas really call into question all the conventional wisdom about private property and
what is that?
Land as a resource and what that means. And then when what was exciting about writing the book is branching out into interviewing people in a more intentional way. So when I started writing the book, it was based on casual conversation and just, everyday relationships with friends and neighbors. And then when I got deeper into the book and I realized I really want to know what it would be like to try to live off of acorn flour, then I found a friend who really specializes in wild foods and scheduled a time to sit down with her and really talk to her about, okay, let's say there was a family of 4 and they wanted to make it through the winter eating acorn flour. How much would they have to harvest? What what is that like? What is it? The part about having grubs and mixed in with the acorn flour, making it more nutritive.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I was you had me so, I was just captivated by all of that and how much they have to collect, and that's a job that Pearlie does with Lily, I think, right? Or was it Karen?
With Helen, yeah.
Oh, with Helen.
Yeah,
sorry.
and then also a lot of those
with
ways
Mean Aunt.
Yeah, the Mean Aunt.
She's the Mean Aunt.
Yeah, and then it's interesting, as soon as you start learning about these food systems, it leads you, and also about any kind of trying to homestead, any part of that, it leads you directly into questions about colonization and bears the traces of that. So my friend who was telling me about the acorn gathering, that just led me to more research that, of course, then led me to stories about the ways that Native people in the region would be gathering acorns for their stores, and settlers would be coming along and stealing the Native people's acorn stores. And so this idea of happy multicultural learning from learning skills from exchanges of skills, it really actually has a really brutal tinge to it. And learning that history, I think, is a really important part of living in a place, and really knowing how to love and be in a place is trying to be real with that history and that ongoing reality, for sure.
And did you have any idea that all of this, when you started thinking about the story and as it was unfolding, that it would just bring you to all these other places, the depths?
Well, you can't know, but you have to let a story surprise you. And what would happen, too, is that I would interview a friend, call somebody up and say, I just need to know, I need to know if this is how an excavator works. And the person would then start describing their experience, like working on a pipeline crew, or like what it's really like to be. And there's no way you can ignore those kind of conversations and storytelling. You just have to let the story happen and unfold in ways that surprise you, and really, listen deeply and be sort of accountable to the community that you're writing in. So I've tried to share drafts with people as I go, and I feel like in some ways it's been a really community process.
Well, the whole book has a community feel, so that's really cool to hear that's, that was obviously intentional, but that's how it's sussed out. So what is the community reaction to the book?
It's so funny. I've been camping all summer, and I just got back to
town.
Right.
You said that. I'm sorry. I'm like, wait. Yeah.
No, and I was a little worried, like, okay, I know that, it's one thing for people from outside the area to read the book and think, oh, it's about country living, or it's about, I don't know, but the people around here are really going to hold my feet to the fire. And so far, it's been really wonderful to hear the responses from local folks and people who have generational connections to this area. It's been really powerful to hear.
I can't
hear
even
the generosity
imagine
of the responses from people.
Yeah. So wait. So the book comes out and you're gone. You're camping with your kids. That's funny. And you just got back. So that was very well timed. But I was fascinated by, whenever there's cooking and food in a book, I'm immediately drawn to, like, whatever that is. I want to know more about that. And I did find myself looking things up. And I'm on the phone with Madeline Ffitch. We're talking about her new novel, Stay and Fight. Do not miss this book. That's all I'm going to say. We're not going to give too much more of the story away. But there were so many things. The trees. So Rudy thinks everybody needs fruit trees. And they have this secret, this plan of attack to plant these trees. I was like, that was so funny to me. But why were the fruit trees specifically very important to him? They try and plant them at the principal's. They're doing it at night. It's a furtive activity. Where did that come from, and what was the meaning, behind that? Because I really connected to that. Plus, I love fruit trees. So.
Of course. Yeah, I think for Rudy, the idea of fruit trees has a lot to do with the idea of food sovereignty and independence. And so for him, he's adept at turning everything into an opportunity for conflict and fighting. And so maybe for anyone else, they would just be like, I love fruit trees, and wouldn't it be nice if we could plant them? And, for him, it was like, we're going to go to battle, and our weapon is going to be fruit trees.
And they will have to take care of them. They will be commissioned to take care of these fruit trees. And that, yeah. So it was an idea, conflict at any cost, anywhere. And when they wind up, was it 6 wind up getting planted? I don't know. He took it as an encouraging sign because there were 6 that remained or something like that. Is that... Is that right? Yeah.
And I've worked as a tree planter too, and it is one of those things you just plant and you hope for the best, but you know that only a percentage of those trees that you plant are going to survive. So there's something in there too.
There's so much that's connected within the story to larger issues, and that's why it's just such a great book to like. I want other people to read it so we can talk about it. That's probably why my daughter said you really need to read this, so that she and I could talk about it, and we talked about it a lot. And and I actually brought it. I was away a few weeks ago and brought it with me, and one of the women in my workshop needed a book to read. She didn't bring books. So I said, I'll share with you because I can't possibly read all 5 that I brought at the same time. So this book went around and everybody was enjoying it, which was really cool. I really liked that we could talk about a book that, certainly wasn't out yet and that people knew nothing except for my daughter said, this was great, you must read it. So it was really a really neat experience too. So there's nothing like sharing in a community of readers a book, especially. So that was it was really good. It was one that I brought with me when I was packing. I'm like, I must bring Stay and Fight by Madeline Ffitch. And so how did you settle where you are? So you're not from there. Like, how did you wind up in Appalachia, Ohio?
Right. Well, I was I was running a theater company, and we're touring about 6 months a year, and then we kind of like find a place to put down roots for a month or so till we made a new show, and then we'd keep touring. And then around that time, my partner's family lives around here, and so he got a piece of land, this land that is really pretty much maybe the most autobiographical part of the novel is
wow.
the land. It was easy
please
for me
take pictures. Please get on Instagram and take those pictures. I want to see those, Madeline.
Yeah. Well, it's something, I think it's a writer's trick, right? It's like you can go back to these really concrete details. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do next with everything you've invented, but if you can really remember what the nettle patch is like and exactly how many steps there are up through the orchard, it really can anchor you somewhere. So that's kind of what I started with. And at the time, I thought, it's a low-stakes decision for me to move here because I tour 6 months a year, so sure, I'll move to a very isolated rural place with no running water and no electricity because I'm not even going to be there that much. And then one of the things I learned really quickly about rural living is that you have to be there. I mean, if you want to take care of animals, if you want to plant food, if you want your neighbors to trust you, if you really want to know people and be part of the community, it's not one of these like, I'm based here, I live bi-coastally or whatever. It's
exactly.
Like, you got to be there. And so, and then, pretty soon after that, I stopped touring with the theater company, and then since then I've had 2 kids and written a couple books, and I'm pretty rooted where I am.
Sounds like it. Rooted Rudy. Is that where that came from? Just the way you said it.
Subliminally.
But the mean ant thing, I mean, talk about, so Helen's name, so Pearlie calls her mean ant. And lovingly, right, I guess?
Yeah.
I mean, she's tough on...
Well, love and hate are this close, right? I mean, lovingly, yes, but I mean, who do we love best? Also the people that are the most challenging to us.
Yeah, I just thought that was so... it just caught my attention every time. Every time I read that, it meant something deeper to me in their relationship. And so it was just everything, every little detail combined, just you wove it together just gorgeously, and I am thrilled to share it with the Reading with Robin audience. And we do have 3 copies to share, so they will be up on the Facebook page on Reading with Robin. You can find Madeline at MadelineFitch.com and also on Twitter, and hopefully more pictures on Instagram. And did you do a book tour over the summer? Was that part of the trip, or?
I'm about to start doing events. So I'm going to do an event next week in Cincinnati, and then I'm going to be at the Decatur Book Festival in Atlanta and the Brooklyn Book Festival in September. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of events.
Oh, that's so fun. Oh, we'll see you in Brooklyn then. We'll make sure we come to say hi. We'll definitely be in Brooklyn.
Love to meet you, yeah.
Love to meet you. Who's on your panel? Do you know?
Oh, I should have been more prepared for this moment.
No. I'm just all of a sudden, like Brooklyn Book Festival. But I haven't been to the Decatur one yet. But they're so much fun. No, you don't have to. I'll find you. Don't worry, I'll find you.
Well, I'm going to be on the Decatur at the Decatur Book Festival with Tupelo Hassman, her new book just came out yesterday called Gods with a Little G, and I've read it already. And so it's a panel that's about kind of finding home in unlikely places, and
that'll be fabulous.
I'm very interested to talk with her about her approach.
That'll be great. There's nothing like a panel where the books are really well curated. I mean, I've been on different ones. The ones where it's like, wait, who saw a common thread? I mean, you can always pull one. They're all books. Yes. We're going to talk about books, but I think the ones that are really special, it's just different. So that sounds like it'll be a really great pairing. And I'll look forward to seeing you in Brooklyn as well. What are you reading this summer? What did you take on your trip?
I've actually been reading a lot of Sarah Schulman's books, and I've been rereading all of her novels. And I am also rereading Crystal Wilkinson's The Birds of Opulence. She's another Appalachian writer that I really admire. And so those are a couple that I've just had with me and whenever I have time to read when the kids don't need me to.
I know. When you have little ones, it's just, I read very little when my children were young. And when you just said when you were talking about rereading a book, it just made me think about books that I like. You said reread, and in my mind I went, you know what? There are some books that I'd like to revisit, but I never feel like there's that time. But yet, they're the ones that I've kept around that are really special. So, and sometimes I post that. What's a book somebody's reread, or what's on your stack to reread in between all of the new books?
Well, another book that's coming up soon. I hate to. Sometimes it feels like a tease to.
Yeah, we're totally. Oh, Madeline, please tease the audience. Go for it.
My friend, the poet Heather Crystal, she's just written her first nonfiction book, and it's called The Crying Book, and it's going to be out on Catapult.
We love that.
Fall.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We love Catapult.
It's just an amazing book. I mean, it's nonfiction, and it's all in these kind of bite-sized pieces. I mean, if you talk about a book club book, I think it's like perfect. But it's just the kind of thing I like, especially for my reading style right now. I can pick it up and read a few of the sections, and it's all very deeply researched. And so people will be able to get it soon, or they can't quite get it yet.
I love that. Well, we totally tease you. There's nothing like what's coming down the pike, and books that I post a lot about the books that I'm reading, and then when people ask what's that, I have to think about, because we do read 6 to 9 or 12 months ahead. So, but then people can pre-order. They can go to their favorite place and pre-order. So it's Heather Crystal, The Crying Book by Catapult. Out by Catapult. All right, thank you. I always make notes. The list can always be added to. I'm always hopeful that I will get to them, especially when an author I admire mentions a book that they enjoy. I have to know what it is. So thank you for sharing that, and excited for your book tour. I'll be following, hoping that there'll be photos of this land you speak of.
I will try to make that happen.
On your Instagram. No pressure, Madeline, at all. And what's next for you? Are you working on another book?
I am working on another book, and I went to my first writing residency this year, and I'm about to go to my second, and I have to say that the amount, for me, finding time to write, it's like that's where it's at for me. That's like the priceless thing.
Yeah.
So I'm deep into another novel, and I'm pretty excited about it.
I am very excited to hear that. How long are you at the residency for?
I think I'm going to be there for 3 weeks this time. Yeah. The last
and actually,
2 weeks.
While we're at it, explain to the audience what a writing residency is. I always think, of course everybody knows, but they don't.
It's a place where writers and artists, so these residencies are for people across discipline, can go and just find support while they get work done. And the ones that I apply to are free of charge, and they actually support you, feed you, put you up while you're there. And that's what artists really need. They just need time and somebody to make the food, which I just really, really appreciate the people who are working to make that happen for artists. And it's a lot of uninterrupted, quiet time to work, and that's might not sound glamorous, but it's extremely sweet.
Oh, it sounds heavenly, and you do have to apply to those. And people, I know there are so many different ones, and I love hearing about those experiences and the connections people make of them, and how much time is communal time, and buckling down and doing your own work, and having that, like you say, that space, and somebody doing the cooking, and just time to fully devote to your work.
And I'll give a shout out and just say that. Like when I got back from my first one, I immediately posted on Facebook, if you're a writer and artist, please apply to one of these, and I will babysit your kid. Your kids can stay with me while you go, because for a lot of working parents that I know, the reason they can't go is because they don't have they have kids, and you can't leave for that long. And I just stopped breastfeeding, and so it was like the first time I could go, but I also have a lot of family support and people to help me. So I think for anyone who can't go to the residency but could offer to help with supporting somebody by looking after their kids while they go. I think that's like a huge way to show support for an artist that you love in your life.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Also show up at signings, also buy books, also go to the library and request that they have the books, or go to the bookstores and say, do you have my friend's book? And if they, I always tell people to do that and just get the buzz out of once there is a book. But while they're going through the creative process, that is a wonderful way. When people say, is there anything I can do, and they don't really mean it, this way you have an answer. Yeah, here's something you can do. I love that. I'm glad you asked. So thank you for sharing that. And when do you go on this next one?
It's the beginning of September. after Labor Day.
So then you come back in time for the Brooklyn Book Festival, where I will try and find you, whichever panel that you are on. But this is so much fun, and it's such a treat to talk to somebody after I've read a book that I could just go into. I have so many things dog-eared here, and so many special passages and things I reread and went back and just really immersed myself in this story, and a lot to think about. And thank you for sharing it.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions. It's really means a lot to me to hear how closely you read the book and how sort of nuanced and well-observed your questions are. It's really great. I'm glad you got a chance to talk about it with your daughter.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I know. I'm telling you, she was like, this is your kind of book. You are going to love this book. So write again. And I always tell her when she's right. So true is true. And Madeline Ffitch, stay and fight. And we look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.